Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. And we've got a lot of interesting news to cover. There's some news about some of the tax implications going on. But again, kind of stepping away from the election. I don't know about you. I'm tired of it all. I just can't wait till it's over. But again, we're going to focus on taking a step back. And we get this question all the time. How do I start? What do I do? So for the next few days, we're going to do kind of like primers. If you've been sitting on your taxes, not sure where to go, what to start, how do you start? What information do you need? And how do you even get a hold of the IRS or state tax agencies? So stay tuned, and that's gonna be the topic of the day, and I'm excited about it because it's information that people need that gets asked all the time. So stay with us, and we will be right back. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. We've got a lot of news to cover. And the first article, I think it's really important, and I love talking about this because it is such a big issue out there. This is cybersecurity, making sure you have basic protections for you, for your loved ones. And so this is something I highly recommend people go over. If you haven't gone over basic password, email protection, again, it's very key that we do this. So, for example, I had someone I was talking to the other day, and they were hiring us on, and in her emails, an older lady, she had her birth date and her full name. I was like, oh, you know, I felt so bad for her, and I said, you might want to change it. And she's like, oh, why? I was like, well, this is why. The world has gotten nastier. Fraud is all over the place. The last thing you want is to have people be giving away your information. There's all kinds of fraud out there. People see it all the time. I see it all the time. You have a missing package, USPS package. We need you to update your information so we can get this package to you. And it's a bunch of hooey. Um, it's just a lie. So again, be very aware. Again, if you want to go to the security summit, it has all kinds of ways, and I don't want to scare people, but it's important that you, and especially um, if you have older folks that you're with and you take care of, that they're aware of some of the online threats, that you make some simple changes to make sure that they can't go in and access all kinds of other issues, um, and really hurt someone. So it's part of it is to help teach children and teens, but especially the elderly too, how to recognize and avoid online scams. Um, one of my own sons, smart kid, but he opened a new Facebook page. We were pretty strict on social media, so he got a Facebook page, and he sit there, and anybody that sent him a like, he was accepting it. And all of a sudden, all this stuff that he didn't want started popping up on his Facebook page, and they were asking for information. I was like, look, there's some people that they're just scamming, and be aware of it. So again, October was National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Um, there's lots of online tips, scams, and report phishing. And it is important to report these. You might not think that they do anything when you report these scams, but it does help the IRS and the FBI see what's going on and take action in a real time manner, at least warn people about it. So scams are where they're trying to actually take your money. Phishing is where they're trying to take your information. And again, here's the email to report the phishing, where you have all kinds of scams. So the IRS does not send unsolicited email and social media to discuss personal taxes. Just doesn't do it. Anything discussing tax refunds, payments, or tax bills, it's going to be by mail, normal mail on official IRS letterhead. Um, don't reply, open, or attachments or click any links because that's how they get into your computer. And my wife, the last 6 months, did something similar, and we had to backtrack. And it was. She realized it was a scam halfway through, but um, we were able to backtrack as well. So make sure you protect personal information, um, birth dates, addresses, age, financial information, bank accounts, social security numbers, all of those. You do not want those easily accessible on your computers. Having strong passwords, multi-factor authentication. So when you get on your computer, you have to put in an extra code every single time. It's a pain, but it can really protect you and your loved ones. And use updated computer and phone software. So on your cell phones as well as your computers. Um, and then if you want to be extra secure, you can always use a VPN. So you can look at it. So there's a lot of different online safety tips because scamming is such a big thing today. And I was going to do this a little bit differently, but I'm going to jump ahead to the next article here. This is about a scam that hit not individuals, but JP Morgan Chase. So as JP Morgan identifies people, this is also something you might say, hey, Robin Hood, we're stealing from the rich. No, these are thieves. This article from CNBC is a bit misleading. Begin suing customers. Yeah, customers that actively try to defraud and rip off JP Morgan Chase. And I'm not a fan of Chase. I use them. Um, but in a limited capacity. But it's anytime you have someone stealing from someone else, it is not a good thing. It's not commendable, and that's not how they do it. Yes, they're customers, but they're customers committing fraud and committing crimes. So apparently, there was this glitch for 4 days or so, um, and JP Morgan has been suing these customers who stole thousands upon thousands of dollars by taking advantage of a technical glitch. Basically, they had somebody write a bad check to them, and they went and withdrew as much money as possible. So, and in Houston, someone unidentified accomplice wrote a $335,000 check, and he went with $290,939.47. So basically, he took everything out of his account that he could from this bad check. And so he went to an ATM. So the bad check was deposited in an ATM. He went in, took out as much money as he could, and then the check bounced. So there was a small loophole. It was closed within 4 days. But TikTok, which is again, there's a lot of problems with TikTok. Won't go into that right now. But this went viral on TikTok, showing people how to steal money from Chase. And now the people that did it are being sued because, of course, they know who the consumers are. And this is another form of fraud where they tell someone, oh, we'll deposit this check. We just need you to take the money out and wire it to us. And you get to keep a portion of it or whatever. It's a fraud. It's a scam. And if you fall, again, there's no free lunch kind of thing. So people that participated that can be identified are getting sued. They will probably be prosecuted as well as they get identified. But this happened all over the place. So the JP Morgan Chase is filing lawsuits in federal courts and going after the people that do the highest amounts. And I'm sure they're getting reported for criminal prosecution as well. So again, this is taking advantage of use of paper checks. And again, yeah. Criminal cases, yes. These are they're separate from potential criminal investigations, but they have referred cases to law enforcement officials across the country for this because it hurts everybody, and it's encouraging theft is never a good thing. So moving on, interestingly enough, we've got a couple articles, three articles actually on what's happening in the world and bad actors in the world. There's a lot of bad acting going on. So, North Korea and Russia. Putin gave up all pretense of being sane when he invaded Ukraine and highlighted how horrible his military is, which is a good thing. Just exposed to the world how weak they are. But at the same time, here we have North Korea sending troops to train in Russia and potentially, and I believe they're starting to fight in Ukraine as well. So why in the world is Russia going hand in hand with one of the worst dictatorships in the world? Well, it says a lot about Putin and the current Russian dictatorship. So again, they sent 10,000 troops, tripling its estimate and prompting NATO as well as EU warnings of a dangerous expansion of the Ukraine war. Um, North Korea signed a mutual defense pact with Moscow, which doesn't make sense because it's not a defense. Moscow initiated this aggressive war, so it's. But again, they're getting closer and closer in their treaty, and it's yeah, pretty crazy here. So again, this deployment is very concerning. At first, there's only 3,000 troops, now up to 10,000. And again, this is expanding the war in Ukraine. So far, 600,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded since the conflict started. And Russia has been making steady territorial gains, but at the same time, again, their military is not the happiest. I mean, it is not performed well over this, but again, they're going to eventually overwhelm Ukraine unless there's a serious change, or what's happening now is not sustainable. So again, bad news to see more and more, to see the worst dictatorships in the world cooperating. This next article, and we're going to have to take this over the break. Let me go ahead and share this. This is scary. So here we have a California man, a U.S. citizen, was abducted by Iran, and I'm surprised this hasn't been in the news. Nobody's been talking about it, and Iran just executed him. So we're going to get into this more about what happened, but you would think American citizens would have more protections overseas, but again, nothing happened here. And they've been pleading for his release, and Iran just executed him. So we'll get into that right after this break. Welcome back, everybody. So again, talking about what just happened. Again, this article is from yesterday. This is an American citizen. He's been residing in California for decades. So he left Iran when he was very young, grew up in Germany, and then came to the United States. Lived with his family in Glendora. He's a U.S. citizen, and Iran accused him of planning an attack on a mosque that killed 42 people, wounded over 200 people. However, Iran is known for making trumped up charges to go after dissidents, anybody that disagrees with Iran from other countries, and targeting them. So again, they've been is among the many Iranian dissidents who have been kidnapped or tricked into returning to Iran in recent years. So while he did not return to Iran, they grabbed him. And so the German government and the U.S. State Department have no comment. They haven't provided a statement on this. Again, I think it's, next article, I'm going to give kudos to the Biden administration, but this is shameful. So Iran reported on the execution, accused him of being under orders. from masters in Western intelligence agencies, the United States, and the child-killing Zionist regime. So they're just nuts. I mean, the Iranian government is nuts. Why we give them a penny? Why we negotiate with them at all? They are the biggest sponsors of terrorism in the world, and so it's just just absolutely insane that again we let stuff like this happen. They also accused him of disclosing classified information, and again, it's just really silly. So he had a layover in Dubai as he's traveling to India, and it's there that he was kidnapped. So I don't know if Dubai was complicit, but you had Iranian agents that kidnapped him and took him into Oman the following day, and that's where he disappeared. Um, and again, this is Iran going out and uh, snatching people. So he grew up in Germany, had been traveling between the U.S. and Germany since the 80s and 90s, and then settled in California in 2003, and he's been living here ever since. In 2009, they tried to assassinate him, and that was foiled by the U.S. government. And an Iranian agent was arrested and convicted of the planned murder. So again, they've been spending the last few years trying to advocate for him to be released. Um, his whole family are U.S. citizens, and it's just really, really shameful that Iran executed another U.S. citizen here. Um, so be aware. Again, prayers out to their family. That's really a very sad thing. So next article, this is where the Biden administration actually did step up at the very end of their presidency. But I think it's good they're doing something here. U.S. is curbing rules or finalizing rules to curb AI investments in China and impose other restrictions. Good step in the right direction. We need a lot more. Because again, China, North Korea, Russia, they're doing everything to undermine democracies. They're doing everything to attack the United States. And we're standing by and just watching it happen. And to be fair to the Biden administration, it's been, Republican and Democratic presidencies alike have done very little about Chinese aggression. You can argue Trump did more than anybody else, but at the same time, you can argue he didn't go nearly far enough, which I think he didn't go nearly far enough. But again, I'll applaud anything that's a step in the right direction here. This covers three key areas: semiconductors, microelectronics, and quantum information and technologies in certain AI systems. So they go into effect January 2nd. And again, that will be overseen by the Treasury's Office of Global Transactions. So again, these are important issues. Long term, China and the Chinese Communist government is really, they act like our enemies. They are conducting all kinds of war against us in different forms, shadow wars. And so, I won't trust them as far as we can throw them. Not that I'm advocating for war, but again, to step up and hold them accountable or fight fire with what they're doing. So, interesting article. Battle for space is on, and this is about a new growing arms race to be concerned about and make sure that we are leading. Again, we're spending more money than anybody else, but again, a lot of companies or most countries can get a lot more bang for their buck because everything's so expensive here in the United States. Here we have, and it's an interesting article. I don't want to go into it too much because we're running short on time. I wanted to get to the main topic of the day. Again, space is important as a war-fighting domain. In the next war, it will probably have a lot to do with fighting over satellites, fighting over space installations, and trying to make sure that we get we're prepared for any space, um, any kind of fighting that happens in space. So we're talking Earth to space missiles, and I'm sure the governments are already working on space to space. Kind of breaks it out. China and Russia have already been developing these kind of weapons to kill satellites using missiles or other kinetic weaponry, electronic warfare, etc. And then, while they've not been deployed in warfare, if you don't think they've been developed, Russia, India, China, and the United States, it's definitely part of the arsenal and getting ready for this. So the United States has an outdated treaty from 1967 that prohibits nuclear arms and WMDs from being employed in space. But again, it's the UN doesn't have much teeth to actually enforce that, and who knows what people are actually doing. So again, another cause for concern. But again, just making sure it is the final frontier. It is very eye-opening as to what can happen. So let's bring the conversation back down to earth. Sorry, couldn't help that. This was interesting. This is on Yahoo Tech. Again, this is Elon Musk at the Trump rally in Madison Square Garden. Now, this is what I've been waiting for someone to talk about. They in his conversation with Trump, when he sat down and did an interview that sounded more like you know, a bro conversation than, hey, let's do a real interview and a hard hitting interview and actually explore topics here and question. Elon Musk was more, "You're awesome," and Trump was like, "You're awesome back." I didn't think there was a whole lot, but they did talk about doing this department to cut government waste. So they did talk about this, and so again, he did his version of the Dean scream, which is what he's doing there. He claimed he could slash $2 trillion in government spending. So this is again, he doesn't lay out how much, because the problem is if you actually say what you're going to cut, then people throw a massive fit. There are plenty of articles talking about how he would hurt Social Security or this and that. Something needs to be happened. Something that needs to be cut. And they're talking about a new department, the government efficiency. So, a little ironic to create a new government department, add another layer of bureaucracy. But if they can really cut back spending, and ironically, the Biden administration has been putting in safeguards or to try to prevent federal employees from being cut like crazy. And here Elon Musk says, your money is being wasted, and the department is going to fix that. We're going to get the government off your back and out of your pocketbook. So that could be very interesting. Again, this is something that's been mentioned here. He's talking about it again after the Trump rally. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happened. I mean, Musk has railed against government spending, and it doesn't matter how much Trump cuts taxes. If you don't get the government overspending under control, it won't matter. That's something I've said. So again, it's a huge task. He's going to upset plenty of people by actually cutting spending and cutting it seriously. So again, there's if you just look up Elon Musk cutting spending, most of the articles that popped up were all about how he couldn't do it, how this is going to hurt people, etc. But again, we have to get the government to reasonable places. So again, it's you can't spend without any sanity, and that's really where we are. So I'm going to switch gears real quick. Couple last issues, and normally I haven't talking about property taxes, but one of the real downsides that go with increased home values, the home values skyrocketing, cost of housing is that then property taxes go up. Even if they don't change the percentage of their collections. When property values skyrocket, property taxes, of course, go up with it. And now you have in Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson is proposing a property tax hike. He did promise not to raise property taxes during his campaign, but what promises and politicians, they have a nearly $1 billion shortfall. And so he says, I don't want cuts. I don't want layoffs. And he said, I saved him $200 million in last year's budget, but the harsh reality is this: the expenses are more than their revenue. So you can either come at it with the hatchet and do some serious cuts to balance things, or raise taxes. So again, some of the other alternatives is to raise the liquor tax, a 1% tax on groceries, video gaming or hiking fee. But again, this will be discussed on tomorrow on Wednesday, and as they hash out the budget and come up with it. So if you're in the Chicago area, or watch out for this and how this can hurt you. And going with this, the last topic for today, or article, Florida is getting hammered more than anything else. Why? They're not raising property taxes, but they're still skyrocketing. Why? Because the value of housing has gone through the roof as everybody's been moving. Again, it's been a very popular destination as people leave high tax blue states. And it's, again, the property taxes are climbing. They're still nowhere close to New Jersey levels, which are insane. But again, 250 every month, and for people, increases on average. And the median total cost of housing is $2,797. So wow, Florida not so affordable anymore. And so when you have property jumping for $100 a month roughly to $250 a month, that hurts. That's hurt people's pocketbooks. That's an increase in expense, and that's again, rising home values have not stopped. And you also have a lot of issues with home insurance going through the roof due to all the natural disasters and hurricanes that they've been having. So it's been a double whammy on housing prices and affordability of housing in Florida. So it's a concern for homeowners, property owners across the state, but also across the country. So what we're seeing happen in Florida, property taxes have just gone up all over the place, and it's going to be interesting to see how governments address this, try to help this. But again, it's just another symptom of what's been going on as people leave certain areas and flood to other areas. Again, it's symptomatic of the inflation that we've been having, and it's just hurt. The full pain has not been felt yet. So, want to switch gears here and jump to our topic of the day, which is, how do you start when you're talking to the IRS? When you have tax debt with the IRS or states, how do you even start? Well, the number one thing I'm going to advise you is call an expert. Get some free advice. And I know a lot of people are very hesitant, a lot of experts, to talk directly to a tax attorney. You have to pay a consultation fee. You have to actually start paying someone to start getting advice. One thing we do at Guardian Tax Law, and there are other companies that do the same, where you can get some free advice without it costing you an arm and a leg. And so that's how we operate a little differently. But what I'm going to share today is this is the kind of advice that any good professional will tell you if they were your friend, if they were a family member. How do you do this without starting to pay an attorney? Again, the more complicated the case, the more important it is to hire an expert. But first step is get some information. So how do you get information regarding your taxes without blowing up your case? And that's the tricky thing, because when you call, and a lot of people are afraid of this, but if you're just calling and getting information, normally they're not going to blow up your case. But the important thing is, when you do start, you've got to be ready to move forward. So you need to be ready to start taking action in your case, but usually one phone call doesn't trigger all kinds of collection actions. Depending on how bad your case is, there are times that it can, but if you're just calling the main line at the IRS, 1-800-829-1040 is the number. And I'm going to repeat that, 1-800-829-1040. And you're just talking to the practitioner line, they're not going to start the ball rolling. But if your case is in collections, that's where you need to be a little bit more concerned. And the key is here, once you start this rolling and you start talking to the IRS or state tax agencies, you need to be prepared to continue to move forward. And this is what a professional also provides. A good professional will stay on top of your case, make sure you're getting things done, help walk you through the process to make sure there aren't any huge delays. When you have big delays in your case, that's when things can happen. Bank levies, wage garnishments, when you miss deadlines, when you're not responding timely to the collection agencies. So, but we're going to talk about what information do you need when you call them. And so how do you get through? Because you call this number and most of the time you can't get through, or it's a 2-hour wait. You wait 2 hours and then get disconnected anyway. Best time to call, and I've said this many times, 5 to 7 p.m. and ideally Wednesday through Friday. You can call Monday, Tuesday, 5 to 7 p.m. and you'll probably get through. But the best wait times are Wednesday through Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. They're still open, and most people don't realize it. And it's dependent on your time zone. So if you're on the East Coast, they're open till 7 p.m. So it goes off the phone number, the area code on your phone number that you're calling in on. So if you're in a different state, and this is very common today where people have moved, they're going to go off the area code for the time zone that they're going to assume that you're in. So as far as calling them, that's how you would call them. What kind of information you need, I'm going to go through this quickly. First, you want the tax. You want to know about tax compliance. And then you want to get the payment compliance. And then you want to know what are your balances and get the information details on your balances. So we're going to really flesh this out after we come back from the break and talk about why you need this information and how to move forward. And we're also going to talk about how many years do you need to file, what do you need to get straight with the IRS and states when starting a case. So stay tuned, and we'll be back right after this break. Welcome back, everybody, for this final session here at Taxes Made Easy. So when we talk about tax compliance, that's a whole topic in itself. But in general, with the IRS, you want to make sure that you have the last 6 years filed. Now, the reason I repeat that is because the IRS half the time doesn't know what they're talking about. They will frequently tell you need to file 10 years. They're wrong. I can give you the IRS citation to their internal revenue manual that clearly lays out 6 years. So you want to be talking to those first layers of the IRS, because if you're in collections, that's where they're going to start pushing your case forward. But the collections knows the rules better. So when you first call the IRS, the first few layers, they're the ones that are going to give you bad information. They're going to tell you need to do things that you don't need to do. Trust them as far as you can throw them. Again, this is just typical when you're dealing with a bureaucracy like the IRS. So if you have older years that they filed for you or older balances, you might want to consider filing some of those older years. But really, it is the last 6 years. And right now, we're in wrapping up October. We're going to be in November very soon. So if you prepare 2018, the last 6 years right now goes from 23 down to 2018. But if you prepare 2018 right now and file that, it's going to take the IRS 6 months, 5 to 6 months to process that return. Guess when the IRS is going to stop asking for 2018? January 1st. Because technically, you can start working on your 2024 return and be filing that in just a short while. So every January 1st, the oldest year falls off and the new year is added to that. So again, they can't ask for 2024 yet because the filing deadline is April 15th. If you get an extension, it's not all the way out till October 15th, but they have to stop asking for that older tax year. That's how it works. And when you're talking to the IRS, anybody that knows anything, that's exactly what they're going to tell you. Well, they're not going to tell you. They're going to tell you to file 2018 up until January 1st. But before then, you can say, sure, I'll file 2018. Don't hold your breath. And then come January 1st, they can't ask for it. They won't ask for it at all. And they know that. So this late in the season or in the year, I typically don't have taxpayers prepare and file that older return, because by the time you get it prepared, by the time the IRS even gets it, they won't be able to ask for it anymore. So currently, I would look at 19 through 2023. And again, as years change, if you're watching this later in another year or so, again, you just have to look at the last 6 years of filed returns, and then every time you approach January, the oldest year falls off. Now, without tax compliance, you can't set up any resolution. So, and these are returns where you had income, you had a filing requirement. So just make sure that you filed all those returns during the last 6 years where you had any kind of income and filing requirement. If you're self-employed, if you got any kind of W-2 over $600, you will have a filing requirement. So it can be a little frustrating, but you can get all that information directly from the IRS. So there's two ways to get that information. So your wage and income transcripts are what they're called. And that has all the information the IRS has on your case, on your tax account. And that's what they use to file for you if you don't file your own tax return, which is never good. So you can get it through having an irs.gov account, or you can have them mail it to your home address on file with the IRS. Now, of course, it's a lot easier and faster to go on, set up an irs.gov account. I know not everybody wants to do that, but it's the quickest way to access your information. There, it is very in depth as far as and protected as far as getting that information. Just once you get in there, you have to protect your username and password, and it's highly recommended that you use a PIN, not only to file your taxes, but to get in and out of your account. So as far as so that's the first step is getting the information, find out what returns you need to do or file, get the tax information from the IRS, and then there's some state information. If you have to file state returns, states can go further back than 6 years. They're not limited by 6 years. Typically, that's what they ask for. But in every case, what we do is we go in and we ask them, how many years are you requiring? What do they need to file? Surprisingly, sometimes it's less than the IRS, not the full 6 years. They just look at when they had income. Okay, we need them to file this, and this year. But when you prepare your IRS returns, you have to prepare and usually file the state ones at the same time. You don't have to file them, but usually they're requesting similar returns. The states can go much further back, though, than 6 years, and there are times that they do. So don't be surprised by that. How do you do that? You can get wage and income information from the IRS going back 10 years. If it goes further back than 10 years, almost nobody has any information on it. You can go to Social Security Administration to try to get that information, but that is an exception. But when you call the states, and you just call their Department of Revenue, California's Franchise Tax Board. If you're doing a Google search and you type in Georgia DOR, North Carolina DOR, it will almost always come up. Sometimes it's the Department of Taxation, sometimes it's the Department of Revenue, sometimes they have different names across the country. But if you type in DOR, it almost always comes up because DOR is the most common acronym for the Department of Taxation or Revenue, or that's the department that collects taxes. So getting filing compliant is the first step to any resolution. offer and compromise, installment agreement, hardship status. If you're not compliant, if you haven't filed your tax returns, tough luck. Get your tax returns filed first. So this is why it's important that when you go in, if you do talk to collections and they do give you a deadline, this is where people delay the most, is getting their tax returns filed. And if you're doing it the wrong time of year, if you're doing it around September 15th or October 15th or any of the deadlines, it's tough for the CPAs to just drop everything, take care of you, and move forward. We do have CPAs that can handle that. But again, some of our best CPAs also get very booked, and they said, "Oh, give us some time to catch up, and then we'll take on new clients." But this has been a big problem this year. I've had plenty of too many people, or CPA said, we're just too busy. We can't handle your case. So there are good CPAs across the country. If you need a referral, give us a call. We'll help you out. So that is getting filing compliant. The second thing you need to be able to set up a resolution is payment compliance. Now, this is different than filing compliance. Filing compliance is, make sure you have your tax returns filed for the last 6 years at least with the IRS. If you had if you had enough income to trigger a filing requirement. With payment compliance, it's very different. They're looking at the current tax year. So right now in 2024, it's October, November. If you haven't been paying enough in taxes, there's no way you're going to get caught up for most people. But also means you're going to get hit with extra penalties for not paying enough throughout the year. But one of the first guidance is anytime you have a serious situation, you need to triage the situation and stop the bleeding, stop the damage moving forward, which means you have to stop owing moving forward. So right now at this point, people that are gonna, if they don't already have their act together, or they're working to get their stuff together, don't worry about 2024 so much. Again, you're going to owe at this point of the year most of the time, because most people don't have the money tucked away to just get caught up for the full year. If you do, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and do that. Yes, you'll get hit by an 8% penalty, but you'll avoid all the penalties and interest. It can be 47, over 50% over time if you just let it go and don't pay anything. But if you're looking to do a hardship status or an offer in compromise, the more important piece of this is to start in January of 2025. Start the new year off making those estimated tax payments, making sure you're not going to owe moving forward. That way you can breathe easy. And that way you can start the new year off right. Now, if you have a bank levy or wage garnishment now, you might need to start making those payments now to show that, look, you're going to be serious about your taxes moving forward. Even if you're not going to get caught up for the whole year, start now. It's better than nothing. And the IRS wants to see you're going to start making those regular payments. But come January, it's going to be very important that you are not owing for the current year, which January will be 2025 moving forward. And we've had cases where people really struggled with this. They struggled economically. They were always, or financially, they were always going paycheck to paycheck, never had enough money. And they kept owing every year. So they came to me one year and like, why does this case keep dragging on? I'm like, because you're not paying your estimated tax payments. You keep owing every year. Every year it's a new problem. And eventually, they finally got their act together. We were able to wrap up their case. But again, we had more patience with them than we should have. And again, that's when they got hit with plenty of garnishments, bank levies, because they weren't getting their act together. So if you want to get on the straight and narrow, avoid problems moving forward, deal with your taxes, that's great. The best cases are where someone steps into a case and they want to deal with this. They want to listen and get good advice and tackle this head on. So that's payment, filing compliance, payment compliance. So I'm going to go through fairly quickly the information you need to get when you call the IRS. So first of all, what years do I need to file? What years haven't I filed? get the wage and income information. Third, you want to talk about your payment. What kind of payments do you have on me? Does it look like I'm going to owe? And some of this, they're not going to tell you if you need to start, how much you need to start paying in estimated tax payments. But the easiest way to judge this is to look at your last tax return. But then balances. Balance is the next big thing. So you want to know what years you owe, and you can make a little chart. So the year first, and then the next column would be your balance. The next column would be what's called a CSED. And again, we've done whole shows just on a CSED, but that's when your debt is going to expire. And with that information, you want to know if that's a joint liability, if it's separate, you want to know who's actually liable for that. So the CSED is roughly 10 years from the date of assessment. And it tells you which years are going away quickly or which years have 8 to 10 years left on it. It all depends. But if you haven't filed for many years and you're filing your returns, the CSED is going to be 10 years from when you file your returns, and it's assessed, not when the tax return was due. So if you have an older tax return from 2019, you file that in 2024, you have until the IRS has until 2034 to collect on that. So that's why it can definitely help, even if you can't pay your taxes, filing them and getting them filed absolutely helps. And then you avoid the failure to file penalty, which maxes out at 25%. And if the failure to pay penalty, again, it's 22.5%. It's a little tricky there if you max out on the failure to pay penalty as well. But that takes a much longer time for that to max out. So find out which years you owe, the balances you owe, when are these debts going to expire, and who actually owes. Is it you? Is it someone else? Is it a spouse? And that's the basic information you need to take a good look at your case and say, okay, what is the best alternative for me? And even if it's bankruptcy, knowing when your tax returns are filed, if they were filed within the last 2 years, you typically can't discharge them in bankruptcy. But you're going to want that information to take it to a bankruptcy attorney and say, okay, this is a situation. If you have a lot of other debt besides tax debt, I talked to someone just yesterday, and they were dealing with an SBA case. They had a huge case here, but they had a bunch of other business debt, and it looked like their business might shut down. I said, talk to a bankruptcy attorney. Even if you pay me, and even if everything goes 100% right with the SBA and I'm able to settle it, if you have all this other debt and burdens that aren't going to be addressed, bankruptcy will deal with everything in one swoop if you qualify. So getting good information and talking to the right kinds of attorneys that can help you out can absolutely be helpful. We're not bankruptcy attorneys. Again, we refer to bankruptcy attorneys all the time. So again, we can give you a good referral most of the time for bankruptcy attorneys. CPAs, we have plenty of CPAs. That's not a problem. So again, as you go in there, go with your eyes open, making sure you're getting the right information. And the biggest concern here, and this is where people really do need professional help, is knowing the process from start to finish. But this is how you start. You start and you get this information. You can go talk to a tax preparer, CPA, or having this information, I can go over someone's financial information at 30 to 45 minutes and usually give them a good idea what they qualify for and what's the best resolution way to resolve their tax debt. And that can include maybe going to another attorney, like a bankruptcy attorney, and seeing if that's a better fit for you. So again, I hope this was informative. This is just a quick primer. How do you get started? What information do you need from the get-go? And hopefully this is very useful to you. Again, if you have any questions, you call us 520-485-7371 or reach out to us at guardiantaxlaw.com. Have a great day.